very much, Dan, for joining us again. Good to see you. Dan, how are the report of repeated strikes while this ceasefire is in effect? How does this affect the operational strategic calculation of both Israel and Hamas, and what are the challenges and risks associated with the next phase, and also bringing back the hostages' bodies, as we know that from recent reports that one or few of the bodies that were handed were not of the hostages that were supposed to be the bodies of the Israeli hostages?
Well, from the Israeli side, there is always skepticism about Hamas claims, about everything, including the numbers of casualties, including when they say they can't find bodies. Israel assumes Hamas is lying. When they return bodies of a hostage, it turns out to not have been a hostage. Again, Israel assumes Hamas might have done it on purpose. Is it fair on the part of Israel to be so skeptical? That's the genius of lies coming from people who are professional liars. You never know whether to believe them or not. There's always a chance that it's actually true they can't find the bodies. Israel's ceasefire violations, it's several cases where it resumed attacks, which supposedly led to fantastically huge civilian casualties in Gaza, but again, Israel doesn't believe that necessarily, were obviously efforts to push Hamas to stop this policy of delaying the hostage returns and doing it piecemeal, which is obviously very troubling for the families and for Israeli society at large, and is perceived in Israel as basically an effort to buy time until sort of people wary of the expectation that the entire 20-point plan will be carried out. The assumption in Israel is that Hamas does not want to carry out the key point of the 20-point plan, which is its own disarmament and removal from Gaza. And this is a very complex thing where Israel finds itself in alignment with most of the Arab countries who also want Hamas to be gone. And almost certainly with the majority of the Palestinian population who surely wants Hamas to be gone. And in preparation for a future where this effort to disarm Hamas has failed, we now see the sort of grim efforts to come up with an alternative plan, and the current discussion is about Israel maintaining about half the territory of Gaza, which is the perimeter around the interior, which is controlled by Hamas, and where about 90% of the Palestinians currently live, the Gaza Palestinians. And in that area, using that area as a buffer zone, and who knows, maybe in the future, allowing the creation of humanitarian cities there, or zones, or tent cities, some temporary housing for Palestinians who want to flee the external half of the strip, rather the internal half of the strip where Hamas remains in charge, and that's enable a future military assault on the interior of the Gaza Strip at this time, without either the hostages in the way or perhaps with fewer Palestinian civilians in the way.
And Dan, how might these developments influence regional security dynamics, particularly the involvement of the mediators like Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Qatar, and also the international organization like Red Cross?
Well, international organizations have great difficulty operating in police states and areas run by extremists, or as in this case, terrorist groups. Obviously, everything would function better. The UN organizations, the Red Cross, World Food Organization, everyone would function better if Hamas were indeed removed. They're in a difficult position, of course, because a lot of these organizations in such situations are staffed by locals who are afraid of the criminal authorities, and so you have this odd situation, which also exposes the UN organizations, for example, to charges that are potentially true, that their own staffers are collaborators with the terrorist regime. It's just an awful situation, and I mean, as I've said many times on your show, until Hamas is removed, versions of a nightmare will continue to occur. As for the broader regional geostrategic situation, the moderate Arab states, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Egypt, Jordan, and others are, I think, rather solidly aligned with Israel and the West in calling for the 20-point plan to be implemented and Hamas to indeed disarm, which is complex. Qatar, Turkey, in the past have supported Hamas. I think this is a real testing moment for those countries that are more closely aligned with the broader Muslim Brotherhood, from which sprang Hamas, and which had in the past played both sides, to decide if they really want to align with the West. It would be extremely helpful for all the mediators in all their various stripes, in particular Egypt, Qatar, and Turkey, to just put the hammer down on Hamas, to make clear that they support that there should be no further reconstruction, no reconstruction beginning in the areas of Gaza controlled by Hamas, because it is clear that Hamas will therefore use such a process to rebuild tunnels, to rearm itself, to basically use that assistance to strengthen itself once more and to make permanent its diabolical rule. That obviously creates a terrible situation for the poor civilians who are held hostage by Hamas. I'm talking about the Gazans. And that is why I say solutions need to be found for them if reconstruction indeed does not begin, because Hamas has chosen to basically hang on. It's extremely difficult.
Yes, indeed, the challenge is still high. Thank you very much, dperry, for joining us and emphasizing on the points. Thank you very much.